Well, thank you for the kind words. The Deputy Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. If I take long, please forgive me. So I have a lot of things to say. First of all, I want to start my statement by appreciating the good work done by the people of America to us as people of South Sudan. It's the people, it's also the administration. And let me say, all the administrations that have come during our struggle have supported us in that difficult struggle that brought these young people and others to this country. I want to register again our thanks for this humane assistance. We are now an independent country. South Sudan is an independent country. It took us a very long time. Before us, there were others who struggled. They didn't succeed. We came as SPLM, and finally the liberation of South Sudan was completed. But without the support we got from you in America here, we would not have done it. So I want to underline, before I go ahead, I was at the UN General Assembly. My president was supposed to be the one to come, but he got bogged down in negotiations in Addis Ababa. I was also happy that the negotiations succeeded. We have signed agreements with Khartoum, and I want to briefly state what are these agreements and what is the importance of this development in Addis. After the independence, we had outstanding issues. The borders of the new states were not determined. When the British left, they did not leave a map to say, this is the border between North Sudan and South Sudan. So this issue was left with us to handle. We couldn't even handle it in the last negotiations. But at least we have agreed to a process that will take us to finally agree on the limits of the borders of each country. Second, we had problems at the borders, the perceived borders. You will recall from the statement made by the leader of the SPLM in Arizona, he talked about the fighting in Abyei or Pantau, we call it in South Sudan as Pantau, the Dinka name for the tree. there has been a lot of insecurity lately between our common borders, perceived borders. We are happy that the agreements in Addis have addressed this. We'll have a buffer zone where troops would be withdrawn 10 kilometers of the common line, which was made by the AU in the African Union, and the UN Security Council. So that agreement on security is very important to the two countries. We hope there will be any more skirmishes in the common borders. The third was on borders, the movement across the borders. Khartoum had closed the borders. There was no trade going on for the last 5 months. South Sudan has been a raw material site to North Sudan. All the industries that were established are in North Sudan. So most of our goods, particularly basic commodities, even including salt, used to come from North Sudan. But when the borders were closed, it became very difficult for the civil population to get supplies. Although we felt the North was hurting itself since they were gaining a lot of money from the trade between us. We, however, found new avenues. We opened up to our southern neighbors, Uganda, Kenya, and to our neighbors in the east like Ethiopia, and even to our neighbors in the west, such as the DRC Congo. But now that this agreement has been signed on borders, I believe the situation will improve very drastically in South Sudan, particularly in the areas of supplies. The other agreement that was signed was on the status of citizens of other states, of the other state. During the war, we had 5 million displaced in the north. After the war, a good number of them, actually most of them, came back to South Sudan in the 6.5 years before the referendum was conducted. We still have 250,000 South Sudanese in the north who wanted to go back, but because the borders were closed, they couldn't go to South Sudan. We're happy that now they can move freely to South Sudan. Over 40,000 of them were living in open squares. They had left their places of their homes in the north and decided to come to Khartoum to be ready to move to South Sudan. The last 4 months, life was very difficult with them. Now they have now started moving south because of this agreement. Another aspect of the agreement is also some freedoms which we as one Sudan used to enjoy between us and Egypt. 4 freedoms, they call them. Freedom of movement, freedom of movement of people, movement of goods, freedom of residence, freedom of work. We also agreed with Khartoum that if one of our citizens wants to stay in the north, or any of the citizens who want to stay in the south, such citizens will enjoy these 4 freedoms. But more importantly, in the agreement on oil, you will recall last January, the 20th, we as government sat and decided that since our oil was being commandeered, confiscated by Khartoum, we decided it's best to close down the flow of oil. Now we have reached an agreement which is acceptable to both, and then we can resume the flow of oil through the pipelines, the 2 pipelines going to Port Sudan, which is the only port that we can access now. Although we have plans to build other pipelines, one through Kenya to a new port which we have agreed to establish together, and another pipeline through Ethiopia to Djibouti. But before we could build these 2 pipelines, the only pipelines available for us to use to export the crude oil is through North Sudan and through Port Sudan. So these are the agreements signed, but I want to say that Abyei is still an obstacle. We have not made progress on the issue of Abyei, and on very simple 2 issues. As you know, Abyei is supposed to conduct a referendum. People mock Denka. By the protocol of Abyei, they should conduct a referendum to determine whether they will remain in the north or they go with the south. We have been discussing this issue for the last 7 years. We're always stuck on 2. I see it simple, but the North doesn't see it simple. 1, who is to head the Abyei Referendum Commission? Because for the conduct of the referendum, there needs to be a commission. The AU High Implementation Panel proposed that the AU, the African Union, will provide the leadership of this commission. Meanwhile, the 2 countries would nominate 2 persons each. President Bashir is still insisting that it should be a person from Sudan that would head the commission. This could have been possible if we were one country. When we were one country, it could have been possible. But we have tried to find an acceptable person who could head the commission for referendum of Abyei. We had disagreed. And that is why the referendum of Abyei was not conducted at the same time with the referendum of South Sudan. Because by the protocol, this should have been what should happen. So now we think the proposal of the AU is in place. it's best that the chairperson of the Abyei Referendum Commission be somebody else, not from any of the Sudans. We accepted the proposal of the AU on this. Khartoum rejected. The second issue has been who, besides the Ngok Denka, among other residents, who will vote in the referendum. Obviously, the Ngok are 9 groups. They are the primary voters. But since there are other Sudanese from north, from south, resident with them, a debate ensued where Khartoum, particularly President Bashir, is insisting that the nomads, the Masiriye nomads, be included in the referendum. Obviously, this is not acceptable because by international law, nomads who only who pass by, their land cannot be considered as a residence. They have no permanent abode. And there is no precedence of where nomads have voted in a referendum of a country where they don't belong to. But President Bashir thinks these nomads must vote in the referendum of Abyei. These are the 2 issues. The proposal of the AU says those who have permanent abode, that is, their domicile, non-nomads. Bashir refused, we accepted. Now the onus is left to the African Union to decide what to do. We believe that the African Union needs to endorse the proposal made by the committee so that Bashir can accept it. Abyei is, even the protocol I referred to, called Abyei, it was the Americans who proposed it. Because when we discussed in 2004, the question of Abyei, we had so much differences. But then the American government was part of the mediation. It was supporting strongly the mediation, the IGAD mediation, which is a regional body. When we could not progress, the American administration proposed the protocol. When it was looked at by the 2 parties, and it was a fait accompli proposal, that is, leave it or take it proposal, the 2 parties took it. So we think we have reached the same situation now. The AU, the African Union, needs to give its proposal, needs to endorse it. If they endorse it at the Peace and Security Council of the African Union, we believe the 2 parties would accept it. Because then the UN Security Council would have a room even to endorse it. The talks which brought the agreements I just talked about were given impetus by a resolution from the UN Security Council. That resolution was made in April when we fought each other at the common borders. And the UN Security Council said, and they made a resolution 2046. that made all of us to go back to peace talks in Addis. So I think the UN Security Council has a lot to contribute so that the impulse on Abyei is resolved. These are the agreements. Obviously in the South, our people are not happy that Abyei has not been included or left out this time in these agreements. But we are confident it will be resolved. If the international community and the African Union intervene, a solution will be found. There is another outstanding point, that is the two areas. I know sitting among you are people from Southern Kordofan and Blue Nile. The SPLM North, we used to be part of the SPLM. The SPLM North is negotiating with Khartoum over a resolution of question of the conflict in the two areas. We support them so that they can negotiate a peaceful settlement. These two areas border South Sudan. If war continues in these two areas, we will have no peace, practical, because out of the 2,000 plus kilometers of borders with the north, 1/3 of the borders is with these two areas. And therefore we have a vested interest to see that the problem of Kordofan, Southern Kordofan, and Blue Nile, the problems are resolved, and resolved peacefully. We hope the AU, which is mediating, using its committee of the AU High Implementation Panel, will continue pressing for a quick resolution to the conflict in the two areas. Obviously, Darfur is hanging. Another complication came in. The SPLM North, being part of the general North, has gone into alliance with some groups in Darfur, and have formed what they call Sudan Revolutionary Front. So, which means still Khartoum has to accept to negotiate with this bigger body than negotiating with the SPLM North. However, that is a decision that Khartoum will have to make, because peace doesn't work always. Khartoum could agree with the Southern Kordofan and Blue Nile, but Darfur war will continue in it. This is not fair. It's best a comprehensive solution is done. So this is on peace. Now, why I come to Phoenix, Arizona, is my second topic. I have been here before, I believe in 2006. I was during Swani. We came to visit South Sudanese, and actually Sudanese, in Arizona. This time, we came to say, well, the country is independent. We're not anymore at war. We're an independent state, and you are here in Arizona and in America what is your role as South Sudanese to building this independent state? And I want to start by telling you some of the issues or answering some of the issues you complain of. The leader of the youth talked about security in South Sudan. I'm aware, yes, one young man who went back got killed, or actually got beaten and died in Bor area. I'm also aware during a conflict in Malakal, in Upper Nile State, there was fighting by that time before independence between our troops, SPLA, and then the northern troops in Malakal. Then in crossfire, one South Sudanese, who is an American, was also killed. I'm also aware that one in Juba disappeared and his body was found in the River Nile around Juba. 3 incidences for South Sudanese Americans who went back to South Sudan and lost their lives. I appreciate the concern you attach to it, because it's not fair at all for one going back home and then loses his life there. We are still forming our security organs. Yes, we have now we can say we have an army, we have police, and other security organs. But they're still weak. They carry with them the trauma of war. I think some of you know what the trauma of war is. Because people who have been used to warfare for a very long time, I don't say they're normal. It is like when you are used to opposition for a very long time, when you come to head a government, you sometimes behave as if you are still in opposition. So that trauma is with us. I always tell my colleagues, even as we leaders are also traumatized. Forget the soldiers, the foot soldiers. And therefore, it's very difficult creating security organs or army and security organs out of people who have been subjected to warfare for so long. And sometimes even the civil population also is traumatized because they have been subjected to warfare. They have heard so many bombs falling. They have heard firearms, people fighting near them. It will take us a little time, some time, before we overcome this. Insecurity is not only being created by elements of army or security organs. Even the civil population, you know that during the war, our people were armed. They used to protect their lives, their property, whatever they feel is theirs, using the arms they have. In one house, you may find 5 firearms, AK-47. AK-47 became very cheap. Even after peace was signed, it became rampant. And that is why we had, you would hear of incidences, pronouncedly, you would hear of Jonglei having problems. You will hear of Unity versus Lakes, or Unity versus Warab having problems, or Warab, Lakes, or within each state, like what happened in Jonglei. The civil population, one ethnic group or one tribe against another, or within one tribe, one section, one clan against a clan. This is because widespread of firearms, modern firearms. Part of it, the trauma. Cattle raiding became a fashion. Abduction of children in other areas was done. And it's not, the SPLM chairman talked of the abduction. Children abducted and women abducted by the North. Also internally we had those, particularly in Jonglei area, within itself, or with Eastern Equatoria or Central Equatoria. So, but what do you read into it? You read into it that we need to do a lot of work. Some of you would recall after independence. After independence, Dr. Jongaram was buried on the 8th of August. So after independence, we decided to mark in the house of Dr. Jongaram. That's house his widow, Madame Nyandeng. And in that occasion, I surprised the people. I told them there's something that is missing. Now we have achieved independence. We've got to do reconciliation. And for us to do reconciliation, anything that has happened before, we must apologize to one another. And I said, when the SPLM is split into two, I was leading one section, the other faction was led by Dr. Jongara. Our people fought each other, and the fighting was fused in Jonglei, and more precious in Bor area. And in that area, people lost cattle, people lost lives, people were displaced. And I told them, for anybody who has lost his skin or lost property or got displaced, I would like to apologize to them, because this is important. We've got to make an apology to that, so that our people can reconcile. Now the challenge is reconciliation, the biggest one. Our people are holding arms. They are holding arms because they are suspicious of each other. Yes, the independence has been achieved, the new country. But why do they still hold arms? Why are they using the arms against each other? Because they lost confidence. One group, one ethnic group against the other, lost confidence. Clan against the other clans, lost confidence. And the incident of the young man who got beaten in Bor came out of the fact that of election of a chieftaincy, chiefdom. There was a quarrel. And the army mistook him to be behind the quarrel between two clans. Went and beat him, killed him. Now, this is because there is still tension, there is still lack of reconciliation. And by the way, I am a computer wizard. I have been with computers since 1972, when it was mainframe. So I developed with it together. I noticed in the most powerful tool, the internet, even you in America, share with us this drama. If you read your internet war, your messages, with yourself debating, you will conclude there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And more importantly, for somebody who has come to America, is believe what you say, is believe there in South Sudan. What you say is a gospel truth. People think what you have put in the internet must be right. So my advice to all of you would be this. Yes, I love the freedom of speech, but then look at what can make an unnecessary conflict. You've got to stop it. You've got to lead the process of reconciliation. Last year, when the Noor of Jongle, not Lord of Jongle, Law Noor, when they became fed up of the raids of the Murle against them, and decided to mobilize nearly 12,000 youths armed. And when we look at it in Juba and said, well, what are we going to do? Said we have to stop it. But how do we stop 12,000 youths that are armed? I volunteered, I said, let me go to them, maybe they will listen. I went in a very difficult situation, in more or less, in a place which was burned down. We met. And I rallied telling them, look, what you will do in the Murle would not it would not be containable. Yes, you are angry that the Murle have attacked you, but let the government do it. Let us resolve this. Let us disarm the population. In any case, some listened, some didn't, but in the end they left. They went back. Now, the challenge of our state, the new state, new nation, is in itself, for it to accept itself, to reconcile. I want you to be in the forefront of it. Even if you don't go, but in your internet messages, take the tune of reconciliation, the tune of then this violence you complain of would be tuned down. So this is one thing. Now your road, other road. You have come to America, land of where you make your dreams come true. Yes, many people have done that. We were very proud when Maria Gur participated in the Olympics without a flag. Out of the blue, the name became a household. See? And now we were saying, what does it take us to be in Olympics? We're working very hard that the next Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, South Sudan must feature. Not only with Maria, but with others. Some of you can do it who are in America, although it would be a tug of peace, not tug of war, a tug of peace between us and the US. Whether you go in the name of South Sudan or you go in the name of the US. I think you can make your dreams come true in many areas. In sports, you have people who play basketball. And even there's a team now preparing itself in Kenya, team of 12. 11 of them are South Sudanese basketballers. They will tour Europe, they will come to America. I believe you have people here who can play basketball like Deng Ajo, son of Aldo Ajo, and many others. Oh, Manut came. He came from the village, by the way, not from town. When Bona Malwal, father Bona Malwal, he discovered him in the Tuji area and took him to Khartoum. And from Khartoum to the US, what did Manut Bol become? He's a legend. Now that you are in America, the height, you brought the height with you. We did not cut you into halves. You are 6 footers plus. So you can play basketball. You can also realize your dream in education. Dr. Akai Koi, our ambassador, is a medical doctor. A very good medical doctor. And by the way, I studied engineering. Very good engineer. Now, if it were a stable, if it were not because of the war, his name would be in the medical journals. If it were not because of the war, maybe among the scientists in engineering. And by the way, many of our generations, because we could not give the service of which we were trained for, decided put on boots, militarize ourselves, went and fought. Now you have the chance, if you want to sing English poetry, you can dream and dream in the poetry. If you want to become a medical doctor, you can excel in it and be known for having served humanity in any area of your specialization. We didn't have the chance. Now you have the chance. You have the chance to do it. And if you have come to America, I always tell you, go to school. Even if you did not go to school when you came from Sudan, go to school, learn it. I have known others who have come here and attained PhDs. So please don't waste your time. You study. If you can't study, if you find it too hard to read books, then the American dream is still there. Make money. Make money, yes. You know, on my way, I watched on CNN when I was coming from Africa, on CNN, the story of a Korean. You know, Korea had a war like us, South and North. This Korean came to America. First job he did was working in a gas station, filling cars. Then those whom he filled their cars, he would see them well dressed. Then he would say, where do you buy this? In a garment shop. He didn't know the difference between garment and clothing. That they're the same one. So he thought, well, the people who drive posh cars, like clothes like that, why doesn't he open a small garment shop? He did. He's in his late 50s. Now, the business he has done is over $4 billion business. It moved from America, it has gone Europe, it has gone back to Korea, Hong Kong. So the American dream is not only in education. In being successful in other areas, besides sports, education, in business, you can do it. And it is not only meant for the Chinese and the Koreans and the Europeans, it's also for you who came from Africa. So don't think you cannot succeed in this place. You can. I'm saying this because if you can educate yourself, if you want to continue staying in America, you will improve your livelihood, and your kids. But if you make money, even if you don't succeed, but you educate your children, they'll also be ambitious to fulfill that dream. So we want to hear, some of you have stayed 12 years in America, some have also stayed 20 years. We want to hear other successful stories besides Gurmarian. We want to hear success stories of others succeeding in business. Because if you did succeed, if you want to go back, and by the way, we are now becoming competitive with the independent state. If you come to my office, the first thing I will ask, where is he coming from? America. What does he have